At the end of the week, you will be an entirely different person.
Nature or nurture? White Lotus has just finished airing another season, and it seems like viewers alike have come to the realisation that the point of the series is to show that money is the cause of all the characters' problems. Shock, right? Or is it? What if White Lotus was just a tad more nuanced than that, and wanted to explore the idea of whether or not money corrupts, or if it just reveals who we've been all along, if money is in fact an enabler? So, let's return to Thailand to examine the characters for this season and answer the question, are the characters influenced by money, or have they always been this way? First of the characters, and arguably the best of the season, we have the Ratliffs, the kind of family who seem like they've never had to try too hard. Attractive, well-dressed, and following a long line of success in the family, they glide through the hotel like seasoned travellers, who always know exactly what to say or when to say nothing at all. But beneath their surface charm is a telling absence, the absence of accountability. They aren't villains. In fact, they present as affable, polite, and even warm in their appearance. But their charm functions less as a window into who they are, and more like a well-upholstered barrier, a way to keep the world at an arm's length. They deflect discomfort through the medium of silence, internalising problems as opposed to actually talking about them, and to the casual observer, it looks like emotional agility, but in reality, it's just avoidance, and avoidance that's been made possible by money, up until now. This isn't to say they wouldn't exist without wealth. The core of who they are, their chemistry and their instinct to sidestep messiness, that might still all be there, but their ability to live this way, to stay perpetually unbothered, is entirely bankrolled. It's money that lets them delay hard conversations, smooth over missteps, and maintain a curated, frictionless image of themselves. Money didn't transform the Ratliffs into detached people. It simply made detachment a lifestyle. It didn't distort their personalities, it just made those personalities easier to sustain and harder to challenge. And in their world without consequences, being charmingly apathetic isn't just possible, it becomes the path of least resistance. And the Ratliffs have always known how to take that path that leads to the least friction. It is in this way that I think the Ratliffs are, in fact, shaped by money, as they do not behave in their ways by nature. Their bank accounts afford Mrs. Ratliff her snobbish behaviour, the eldest son his entire personality, their daughter the privilege of safety, and the father the motivation to succeed. It is the loss of this wealth that defines Timothy Ratliff's character arc, as he realises he and his family must shed the shell and image of the man he once was, and must do with a little less. Now when Belinda Lindsey returns to the White Lotus, it's not with fanfare or vengeance, but with quiet curiosity. She doesn't need to announce that she's changed, you can see it slightly in the way she moves through space, more cautious and grounded, less open to fantasy as she perhaps was in Season 1. She's no longer the hopeful spa manager we met in the earlier seasons, rather she is the woman who briefly believed in the transformative power of a rich guest's good intentions. In her original arc, Belinda was promised opportunity, dangled in front of her like a lifeline, only to be yanked away by someone too self-absorbed to even notice the harm. She was used as a projection screen for someone else's imagined generosity, and when the illusion collapsed, Belinda didn't explode. She internalised, she learned, and now she's back, not to repeat the past, but to navigate it differently. This time, the offer is just as compromised. She's faced with a moral dilemma. Help someone corrupt? Someone who clearly sees money as the cure to their spiritual emptiness? Or walk away empty-handed, again? Faced with a life void of her dream, she does, of course, take the money. Just as she was left behind in Season 1, she chooses to inflict a similar fate on her colleague and love interest of the season, abandoning him in pursuit of her own goals that he was more than willing to help her pursue. Money didn't change Belinda. Disappointment merely moulded an existing personality of selfish traits that were already there. Next on the roster of guests are the holy trinity of girl gossipers, Jacqueline, Kate and Laurie. They've come to Heal to reunite and spend time together at the White Lotus. Dressed in matching linen, Fueled by turmeric shots and filled with half the ocean's plastic, they come to do what most wealthy American women do: drink white wine and talk about menial things. The three of them each wear different faces of the same privilege. Jacqueline is quite the manipulator, skilled at using faux vulnerability as currency. Kate floats above it all, aloof, too self-aware to engage, too passive to take responsibility. And Laurie, the most earnestly chaotic of the three, is constantly searching, not for meaning, but for someone to tell her she's already found it. They speak in therapy talk and Instagram aphorisms. They book massages mid-fight and use sound baths as emotional resets. Their problems don't get solved, they get rescheduled. They've mastered the language of self-awareness, not as a tool for transformation, but as a shield from accountability. Every breakdown is rebranded as a breakthrough, every act of selfishness is spun as a boundary. Their chaos gets reframed as growth, but only because there's no real cost attached. They can afford to implode in peace. Their retreat is not about becoming better, it's about feeling better. And feeling better, in this case, comes with room service and attractive Russian masseuses on speed dial. Without money, this kind of self-destruction would be untenable. But in their world, recklessness comes with a refund policy. They never have to face the real consequences of their choices, because someone else is always there to clean up, whether it's a wellness coach, a hotel staffer, or even one of the three of them. Their search for healing is real, but the tools they use are curated, commodified, and ultimately hollow. In the end, Laurie realizes that the meaning she's been searching for all along is right in front of her, grounded in the petty arguments and snarky gossip they are all so guilty of committing. If it weren't for their money, I doubt they'd be the way they are. And so for Jacqueline, Katie, and Laurie, they are the way they are because of the wealth and the fame they've accumulated. In stark contrast to those three, we have Chelsea and Rick, who know they don't really belong amongst the crowd, not so much in a social sense, and not in a financial one either. They're not trying to blend in, and they aren't pretending to be anything they're not. They're honeymooners, first-generation guests at a resort built for legacy wealth. For them, this is a splurge, a temporary step into a world that was never designed with them in mind. 1 week of 5-star luxury before the reality of budgets, bills, and small sacrifices resumes. They move through the resort differently, cautiously and curiously. They squint at the wine list not out of ignorance but practicality. Chelsea thanks the staff with sincerity, something most of the other guests entirely neglect, and it doesn't feel performative when she does this. When they see the gulf between themselves and the regulars, the quiet dismissiveness, the casual entitlement, they don't ignore it, they feel it, and they show discomfort in the moments when many others choose to detach. Chelsea is perhaps the most honest and open of the characters for this season. It makes her stand out, and it's testament to who she truly is as a person. The relationship between the two of them isn't free from tension. Chelsea wants more from Rick, more presence, more depth, and more intimacy. Rick struggles to give in the way she asks, but he tries, earnestly, if imperfectly. Their conflict is small, but meaningful. It doesn't explode. It simmers, and it feels real. And that's the point. They aren't good people because they're poor. Because, to be clear, they are not, but they have been shaped by excess, ever so slightly. They have been taught that their comfort matters more than other people's labour. They have been given the opportunity and the option to buy their way out of emotional labour or personal reflection. And there's an honesty to them, a modesty of expectation that keeps them grounded, not out of moral superiority, but out of necessity. And they'd likely be the same at a roadside motel, maybe if even more at ease there. Because for Chelsea and Rick, the point was never the luxury, it was the time, the togetherness, and the idea of carving out a moment that felt rare. They haven't been warped by wealth, they haven't had the chance, and that might be their greatest strength, that they may never get the chance to fully blossom. Chelsea's friend Khloe, currently latched onto Greg to form a couple, appear to be opposites, both to each other but also to Chelsea and Rick's relationship. Khloe is younger, spontaneous, and chaotic in the kind of way that looks effortless but really isn't. She dances barefoot at beach parties, lives in the moment, seduces most within a 10-foot radius. Greg is older, composed, and the sort of man who wants to enjoy the money he seems to have acquired. Together they present like two halves of a satisfying equation, excitement plus monetary stability, youth plus excess, but it's only a matter of time before the math stops adding up. Greg watches the receipts and doesn't let Khloe forget about the cost of the boat and how it is really his. Khloe flirts with younger men and flounders around with the Ratliff boys. Their public moments remain polished but equally dull, and in private, something curdles. Smiles become tight and affection turns into leverage. There's an unspoken understanding between them though. Greg offers access to places, to comfort, to a lifestyle, whereas Khloe offers attention, flattery, a sense of possibility he hasn't felt in years. But neither of them really names the exchange for what it is, and neither do the older wealthy men in the company surrounded by younger wives of a trophy-esque nature. Their relationship is entirely transactional, not in a cold, calculated way, but in a habitual one, and they both know it. Without money, this relationship would not exist, simply. Not like this, not here, and not at the White Lotus. But money didn't cause the dynamic. It just made it more visible. It removed the need to pretend otherwise. Because money has a way of amplifying their subtext. Khloe and Greg aren't unusual. They're just a reflection of what happens when power and desire intersect. And no one wants to name the price. They are, though, entirely themselves without money, because at the end of the day, they both use their inherent nature to get where they currently are. So, does money corrupt the guests of the White Lotus Thailand, or does it just enable an already existent personality? With all the expensive lifestyles lived this season, it seems apparent to me that money doesn't actually change people. It just brings out existing traits that are inherently part of our nature. So, does White Lotus solve the eternal discussion of nature versus nurture? I'll let you decide in the comments below. And thank you for watching.